Going on to a more controversial piece.
Probably the biggest one of them all.
Nice.
The Big Daddy release.
Hi guys, it's Ismail and Henry from Zanko Jewelers, and it's the 1st of April, which means one thing, and that's the new releases from Watches and Wonders from each brand. So today we're going to have a look through Rolex, Patek Philippe, and some from Audemars Piguet as well, and just to give our opinions and in general what we think of the new releases. All right, so which brand are we looking at first?
So the first one we're looking at is Patek Philippe.
Okay, nice.
I think overall it's a pretty strong.
Yeah, I would say out of the 3 brands that we're looking at today, they definitely had the best run of new releases.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Excited to get into this.
I don't know whether you want to save the best till last, but
You surprised me. Let's go.
Let's go. So 2 new Cubituses, bit of a shock because they're not the original 45mm as they were when they were first released. I'm a fan.
Yeah, massive fan. I think them releasing something smaller, more sizable to most people's wrists makes sense. Particularly for me, the rose gold, I feel like you're going to say something different, but the rose gold for me, I think it's perfect balance, kind of playing on the 5711 1R they used to have. So it's nice to have something in a size at 40mm similar to the Nautilus.
Agreed. I think when we first saw the shots when they were released, before we kind of knew that they were 40mm, for some reason they looked so much nicer than the initial release. And obviously we know now it's because it's 40mm. I think technically it's a ladies piece, maybe unisex, but 40mm, that's what it should have been released in
Absolutely,
my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's nice now that there's variety. So Cubitus, thumbs up from us for sure.
Absolutely, only the 40mm, and the white gold's better than the rose. So then I think one of Ismail's personal favourites is the retrograde perpetual calendar in white gold. That's reference 6159G. I think you were saying it's a baby
5316. I mean, we obviously have a bit of affinity for that watch.
Yeah, we do.
Having sold a few, and I think it's a nice access point for people who obviously can't splash 1.6 million pounds on a watch.
Sure.
You know, they can get something very similar, at least in terms of aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I think the white gold works. I'm a fan of the 6119, so I know you were saying about the bezel being kind of not the nicest one.
That's the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about. If it wasn't that bezel, I think I'd like it a hell of a lot more. But like we always said about the 5316, is that it's the younger generation's grand complication. So the aesthetic is on the new release. Obviously the black sort of, not Kevlar, but it's a composite material fabric, much like the Platinum Cubitus, their new strap.
For sure.
So I think it's quite nice.
And I think at the price point, it's £100,000 or 100,920 to be exact. I think secondary market, even if it was slightly over for a perpetual calendar to be finished in the way that it is, I think it's a great pickup.
Agreed. And then one I wanted to throw in there was a bit of a random one for us. I don't think we were expecting it, but it's the 24 perpetual calendar in rose gold. That's reference 7340. Now, the 24 has never necessarily been a popular piece. Obviously, the majority ladies, and it's not necessarily the one that ladies tend to go for. I think obviously the Aquanauts and the Nautiluses are the ones that people are normally looking for. But to have the perpetual calendar on it with that green dial, it surprised me.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways for me. 36mm, great unisex size. And smaller watches are more in trend now. We'll touch on Rolex later, but you know, there's a similar piece in terms of size that I think will lean more towards the unisex market, especially
with all the people going towards the vintage pieces.
Exactly, it does. It does have that look, that aesthetic. It is more, I guess, quote unquote, old money looking. And to have a perpetual calendar again for 100k, I reckon this watch will sell under retail because it is a 24. So to be able to have another option from Patek Philippe outside of the grand complications for a perpetual calendar, it's amazing. So I think they did really well with that.
Could be a bit of a steal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'd throw in a little mention for the Calatrava Travel Time white gold as well. I think the dial was kind of an off-white cream colour. I'm a fan, obviously same colours as what I'm wearing today, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice to see pilot watches, well, pilot aesthetic watches and travel time watches. with Patek, they always they are underlooked. I mean, they have previously like a blue reference of this watch, but I think this is much nicer, much more versatile.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as severe as the 5520p, which actually got discontinued this year, obviously having the 4 pushers. Obviously, they've moved the crown up back to the 3 o'clock, whereas the crown was towards the sort of the 4 or the 5. So yeah, it's not as severe. I think it's a nice piece. They're never that popular, but I think they're underrated.
Absolutely.
And then probably the biggest one of them all.
Nice.
The Big Daddy release, the quadruple complication white gold reference 5308G. In a stunning baby blue dial.
Yeah, I mean, so we can kind of talk about obviously the 528R that we previously have sold here, and the 5208P, which is also a really lovely watch. Obviously, in terms of grand complications, you're looking at a watch again that's over 1 million, but the rose gold was just a touch under. And this 5308G, so the newer reference, obviously with the new updated movement, I think looks just amazing. I mean, it is thick, it is 17 millimeters thick, but I think if you can get yourself around that, in terms of wearability, I think Patek haven't really released a color like that on a grand complication recently.
And again, it's another sort of modern aesthetic for a grand complication, which is what we've always been calling out for. So we've got an instantaneous perpetual calendar, which is quite cool, minute repeater, split seconds chronograph. So it's everything you might want as a horologist in a watch, and not one that we saw leaked either. Patek always keep it under wraps, but it's one of the nicest.
It'll be very interesting to see where it sits on the market, because I know obviously retail is circling around £1 million. I personally think that would be touching close to 2 million, if not more, at least to begin with. Maybe come down, or maybe keep going up. It really just depends on how rare this watch is to get, but I'm excited to see one in person.
I mean, we're talking there's going to be a handful of them made a year, so
absolutely,
the rarity is always going to drive the price up, but exciting.
So, bit controversial, obviously being April 1st, I thought they might have released a few as a joke, but it turns out not to be a joke. So I guess we'll start with the most controversial one, which is the new Land Dweller. It's a completely new model from Rolex. It runs in at 40 millimeters, and they released it in 3 different iterations. The stainless steel, white gold, or white roller saw, so it's a mix of stainless steel and white gold. The platinum, and then the rose gold.
Rose gold, yeah.
Talk to me, what do you think?
The thing with Rolex is that they're nowhere near as good as Patek, or even AP at keeping their new releases a secret. So we've all known about the Land Dweller for quite a while. But there hasn't been a hype, in my opinion, to see it. Sometimes you might release it early, see what the reaction's like. There hasn't been a hype to see it actually release.
That's a good point.
It's a Rolex.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't really got much of an opinion on it. I'm not the biggest fan. Obviously, I like the fact that it's pretty thin, integrated bracelet. There's no rehor on the bezel either, which we presume the serial number will be on the case back, because it's an open case back. So I think it's quite nice. It seems quite versatile, a bit different to what they've normally got. Obviously, it's a smooth bracelet they have as well, so it's like almost a smooth Jubilee and an oyster. But Roger Federer was seen wearing it.
The right person to put this kind of watch on, for sure.
He was half pulling it off, so if he can't fully pull it off, then I certainly can't.
Yeah, look, for me, I think the platinum in particular, I can imagine, at least in person, would be the most impressive. The only caveat to this is that I just think the honeycomb dial was a mistake, and if they should have just made a plain dial, and I would have loved to have seen the watch with just a plain smooth sunburst dial, for example. I'm actually quite, I'm going to give it more kind of trust than other people are giving it right now.
I mean, we always have to reserve judgment until we see it.
Exactly. I feel like in person this will be a nice watch. I think proportion wise it will also be nice, and it's nice to see Rolex kind of compete. I was saying earlier today, is it something to match against the Vacheron 222? Yeah, probably. I
mean, the Rolexes have been getting bigger, your Pateks have been getting bigger, so it's been quite nice to see one sort of 40 millimeters, probably wear a little bit smaller.
For sure.
So yeah, we'll see what it's like when we have one in.
Okay, and then going on to, I'm gonna touch on some of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's the Oyster Perpetual 41 with the new color pistachio green.
Yeah.
And then
Nice
they have the yellow cream 36mm, and then the 28mm OP with the lilac dial, or lavender dial. So yeah, I think they've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Colored Oyster Perpetuals have been, desired as soon as they came out. Talking about the yellow, the green, the Tiffany blue, and the coral dial as well. Obviously, those being discontinued, them releasing some new ones. It's refreshing, it's nice, and I think it's just a perfect holiday watch, if not a daily wear.
Yeah, I think that's what I would have loved to have seen a few years ago when the crazy dials came out.
Yeah,
because they've all been a bit like garish, the yellows, the corals, even the celebration dial. It's all been pretty in your face, but this is kind of refined luxury, if you like, a bit of a matte color. I think they're really versatile. You could wear it summer, like you said, perfect
Absolutely.
summer piece, but I think you could get away with it during sort of spring, autumn and winter as well. It's nice to see. It's a bit more understated than probably the majority of the releases.
I mean, the 41mm, you're looking at picking up from retail around £5,650.
Yeah.
On the secondary market, I can only assume, especially when it comes out, it's going to be over £10,000, and that's just based on what was released before. But I see this coming sub 10,000, and then it will be a very good watch to pick up. I myself am definitely looking to get the pistachio green one. I can't wait to see it in person. I think it would be very impressive. But yeah, I think Rolex should have just made more colors, to be honest.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then going on to a more controversial piece, I don't know, it'd be interesting to get your opinion. It's the Tiffany dial, Oyster Flex Daytona 126518 reference, so the yellow gold.
I mean, if I'm being honest, when they first came out last night, the first message I had from a client was saying how unbelievable that watch is. And I think that sums it up, because the majority of other people I spoke to were like, what are Rolex doing? So I think it's going to show how divisive the piece is. It's so different. It's very different to what Rolex are used to doing. I would have preferred to have seen it on a white gold. I know that when Ismail and I were talking, he mentioned a platinum piece as well. Yeah. And I think I agree that maybe on a platinum or a white gold, it would have looked so much better. It's different, but no doubt that's probably going to be the most popular piece from the new release.
For sure.
And that's going to be selling overs.
Yeah. And then going on to another watch, which I think definitely deserves an honourable mention, is the John Mayer version 2. Everyone's already nicknamed it. It's the yellow gold with the green dial, but this time it's come in with gold sub-dials, and that's the only thing that's throwing me off.
Yeah, agreed.
But I would say it's perfect if you are able to pick this one up at retail. You're getting relatively the same watch as the John Mayer, or the previous reference, 116508, but for less money, because a John Mayer sitting on the market today for a 2022 or 2023 is around late 50s to 60,000 pounds. Exactly. So if you can get this one from retail, it's
like if you want to buy the old style John Mayer discontinued, in the condition like you're buying the new one from the AD, it's 60s.
Yeah. Like so then I think, as far as that's concerned, I think it's a good release, and I think they're kind of listening to the demands of the fans on that one compared to the rest of what they've released. Yeah. So
the only thing that I've thought about this new release is that they've obviously realised that they've hiked their prices up so much on the precious metals over the last sort of year at least. I think it was around 16% on the Daytonas, that they've had to introduce something to try and get the hype back on that model in precious metals. Because I'm sure they've seen a drop-off in people buying that at retail. Whether it's people like the watches or not, and they're buying them just to sort of sell, the loss you're going to have on these pieces won't be outweighed by the other pieces you'll get at retail to try and make some money on. So it'd be nice to see some hype back.
Yeah, especially for the precious metal. Yeah, you're right. Which then goes on to the Tiger Iron dials that they've released, both on the full rose root beer and then the full yellow gold zombie is the nickname, but the 126718 GRNR. I like it to an extent.
On the rose, yes. On the yellow gold, no.
On the yellow gold, no. Yeah, I'm the same as you. I think on the rose it works because it complements the rose gold color. The yellow gold, not so much. It'll be interesting to see how limited they make these pieces, if it will be limited at all. I feel like because it does have a stone dial, it will be, and that's where the real secondary market value will come into play.
Absolutely, and it's a new variation as well.
Exactly.
They've not just introduced a meteorite or nice and Kiesel. It's its own dial,
which is nice to see. So I think, I'll reserve my judgment for how it looks at least, for when it comes in. But I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm just, again, very 50-50. It'll be a Marmite watch.
It will.
Not everyone will like it.
Yeah, just like the
some people will love it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like Eisenkiesel is a perfect example.
For sure.
Yeah. And then going on to, obviously, the re-releases, which are quite, I'm very happy to see them. So new reference, new movements on the Daytona specifically for the re-release of the white gold with blue dial and the meteorite dials on the Oyster Flex Daytonas. So that's the 126515, 8 and the 9 reference. I'm extremely happy to see these back.
Yeah, it was nice to see them. We had wondered whether they'd been discontinued because they were running out of the meteorite, and obviously there was a few other models that had the meteorite on them. But it's nice to see that they've released them again. I'm not sure whether it was to build up a bit of a hype again.
That's a good point.
Because I know that we've seen over the last 3 months, we've had quite a lot of requests for the old reference meteorite dials.
Maybe some people knew what we did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, somebody hedging their bets. But I think the other thing about the blue dial, I've always liked the blue dial on the white gold. I know a lot of people that have that as their favourite watch. But the only issue is you can buy it under retail price for the old reference. So the same thing that we said about the John Mayer, the green dial, is probably the opposite of this one, because people could just go and buy the other one.
It's exactly the same aesthetically. They haven't changed anything. No. So I would say if you are going to pick up that watch, it's much better to get it in the older reference because it literally looks the same. The 126509 is £44,200. So I'm going to quite positively say this is probably going to be under retail as well. Then it just becomes a decision of, do you want the new reference or the old reference? But I mean, I'll leave that up to you guys. And then the last piece I want to touch on is I guess this must have been the anniversary GMT. It's the GMT Master in white gold with the green dial, the Sprite, the inverted Sprite. What do you think?
I am 50-50 on it, to be honest. White gold GMTs never do well. I think the only one that I prefer is the meteorite dial Pepsi. But because that had the nice contrast between the meteorite dial and the blue and red bezel, this doesn't. It's a green on a green with a black. I think it's lost the appeal that the Sprite had. And it's added more weight, and it's on Oyster, which is not as popular as the Jubilee that it was on. So it's a tough one for me, and I don't think it's a good justification for the anniversary.
You know what? I mean, if this is the anniversary piece, I'm going to say I like it only because, I mean, I'm left-handed, so I'm biased. But also, just because it's nice to see a green dial being brought back into the, well, not stainless steel, but the sports range. Obviously with the Hulk being discontinued back in 2020, it is nice to see something come back. I think if they were to really cater to the fans of Rolex, they would have looked to release a Submariner with a green dial, but in a precious metal like white gold or platinum. They haven't done that, but they have released a Sprite. A thought that just crossed my mind when you're describing the Pepsi with the meteorite dial is this watch would have looked really cool if it was white gold with a meteorite and then the Sprite bezel.
100%.
If they did something like that, I would have been more of a fan. But you know what? I think it is something different.
I mean, Rolex have stuck to their use of green in all their anniversary pieces. Not all of them, but in the majority of them. Obviously, you had the Day-Date 40 with the olive dial, and then you had the 116718, which was the anniversary of the GMT beforehand, where it first introduced the ceramic bezel. So they like to keep it consistent. Green has obviously been a colour that's always been associated with Rolex, and you know, it's an instantly recognisable I would just like to have seen, like you said, on a sub, something a bit different. Maybe not the Sprite.
Yeah, maybe not the Sprite.
You know, I'll reserve judgment again until we see it.
Yeah, for sure.
So the third and final one we're going to look at, they've only really released a new sort of range of colour. It's Audemars Piguet. They've unveiled 3 pieces with their brand new Bleu Nuit Nuage 50. It's a ceramic material, almost like a dark night sky blue. What do you think?
Amazing. I think the double balance for me is going to be one of the best looking double balances they've ever released. I said it in a review we did not too long ago for the Sandgold AP. What AP are doing this year in particular with, you know, new materials, kind of breaking the mold of what watches should look like, but still, you know, having all the DNA that they have in their brand. Yeah. I mean, you've seen it with the white ceramic AP that we have. You know, the finishing they get on that piece is extraordinary. And to do it in multiple different colours, God knows how they actually produce these colours. But it's massive.
Kudos to them. I mean, their ingenuity for using different materials is incredible. I think they might have fallen off the wagon a little bit in the inter-year periods between, say, when the white ceramic was discontinued in 2022-23 to maybe this ceramic now. Obviously, a lot of collaborations with rappers and influencers and celebrities and things like that. But I think this is a nice move into the right direction. Yeah. Obviously had the Spider-Man one and the Marvel ones and those interesting pieces. But this is what AP is all about. Like you said, the balance work. I think we've seen a video of somebody at Watches and Wonders wearing it. It looks absolutely unbelievable. They've also released a Royal Oak offshore on a Kevlar strap and the other one on the sort of the full bracelet. Yeah. One's 42mm, one's 43mm. I've never really been the biggest fan of Royal Oak offshores. But the colourway is very nice. It's subtle, blue. That looks like blue and steel, and the other one is full ceramic.
Yeah, I mean the chronograph offshore reminds me a lot of the old Safari. Well, not Safari. They used to call it the whale. Yeah. Kind of APs that we recently had, which was around 2007 to 2012. Yeah, it's nice to see other colours being introduced in the offshore range. Obviously, from the secondary market perspective, obviously the offshores and offshore divers are usually something we advise clients to avoid, just because you will end up taking a loss. It'd be interesting again to see where these sit on the market. Yeah. I would assume it's the same rule of thumb for those, but obviously the double balance being the opposite of that, I think there's going to be a huge premium on the ceramic one. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the blue ceramic came out a few years ago. That was probably a bit more in your face. It was the blue
is a garish blue for sure.
For sure. But this, I mean, reading about it here, it says it's a special hue that pays tribute to the Vallée de Joux clear night sky. Yeah. So makes perfect sense. A bit more subtle, a bit more understated, and I think you'll probably see a larger majority of people wanting to wear this than potentially say the blue one that's a bit more in your face.
And I think especially with this dark blue ceramic, in comparison to the black ceramic and the white ceramic, it's a nice middle ground. It's something a bit different. Definitely will be more of a conversation starter. I mean, not to say the other two aren't, but you know, it'll be a watch that definitely turns a lot of heads.
And it makes the dial pop.
Absolutely.
Very nice. So I think overall, in conclusion, I would say Patek for me were number one with their releases. I would actually put AP just from that one double balance wheel, ceramic AP,
and then
second,
Rolex last.
And then I would put Rolex last.
Heavy.
That's just the main brands. Obviously, we still got AP to come with their whole releases. But that double balance wheel in ceramic is better than any release that Rolex have done this year, in my opinion. Yeah,
I'm gonna go Patek as well, just to begin with. There's some models that we didn't even touch on that I think are amazing, namely, you know, the 7010 ladies pieces with the new aqua blue.
Nice colour.
Lovely colour. Some of the Calatravas and the complications that have come out, you know, they're amazing, and I'm sure you'll be able to pick them up under retail at some point. So Patek definitely takes the first position for me. AP, I'm going to put last only because there's more to see. So I need to see what else they release, because, you know, as you said, in the last 2-3 years of kind of them shifting CEOs and direction, there have been some questionable pieces that have come out. So yeah, I'd rather wait for the rest of them to come out before I make kind of a judgment, and then that makes Rolex second place for me. It's getting a lot of stick for the new pieces, but I think again there's some pieces we didn't touch on, which do deserve you know, more recognition, namely like the 1908. Some of the off-catalog pieces, like the Le Mans Rolex Daytona and Rose Gold.
Yeah, we didn't get into those.
And you know, I think if you can get into that level of Rolex, that's where things really get fun. Yeah. And that's just in general, even now. So yeah, I think it gets second spot.
I think when we have a clearer idea of what the off-catalogue pieces are, they're going to obviously start slowly coming out.
Yeah.
We're going to do another sort of deep dive into those.
Absolutely.
And there's some unbelievable ones. But yeah, a little deep dive into a couple of the brand new releases, hot off the press. I think we're going to reserve our judgment until we've actually seen them in person. Yeah. I'm sure it won't be long. We're having a lot of requests already. They'll be rolling them out over the next couple of weeks.
And as always, please remember to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. And please turn on the post notifications on so that you can see when we post our next review or reactions.